We live in a world that thrives on oversharing, where people post every detail of their lives for likes, validation, or attention. But let me challenge you today with a simple idea. Don't tell everyone your story. Now, I'm not saying you should suffer in silence or bottle up your emotions. What I'm saying is, protect your story, guard your journey, share it with wisdom, because not everyone who listens is rooting for you. Some are curious, some are envious, some are just waiting for something to gossip about. Your story is sacred, it's your power, and when you give it to the wrong person, they might twist it, weaponize it, or devalue it. In a world full of noise, sometimes the most powerful move is silence, sometimes the most strategic decision is patience, and sometimes the most intelligent thing you can do is wait until the right time, the right people, and the right setting to speak. So today, I urge you, don't feel pressure to expose every chapter of your life. Learn to be private, not secretive, discerning, not distrustful, and above all, know that your story has value whether the world knows it or not. 1. Not everyone has good intentions. One of the most difficult but necessary truths to accept is this. Not everyone who smiles at you is your friend, and not everyone who listens to you is doing it with a pure heart. Some people are curious, not because they care, but because they're gathering information. Some listen, not to understand, but to judge, criticize, or later use your words against you. When you share your story too freely, especially the vulnerable or painful parts, you expose yourself to the risk of being misunderstood, misrepresented, or manipulated. There are people who will act like a safe space, nodding, sympathizing, even offering advice, only to turn around and relay your struggles as gossip. In their hands, your story becomes entertainment or a weapon. They may twist your pain into a punchline, your mistakes into evidence, and your growth into competition. This isn't paranoia, it's pattern recognition. Experience teaches us that trust must be earned, not given blindly. Your story, especially the parts you're still navigating, is not something to be casually dropped into every conversation or confided in every listener. When you share something deeply personal, you're giving a piece of yourself. And if that piece ends up in the wrong hands, it can cost you not just your peace, but your reputation, your relationships, even your confidence. Discernment is essential. Just because someone is available to listen doesn't mean they're worthy of the truth. And just because someone asks doesn't mean you owe them an answer. There's wisdom in withholding. There's safety in silence. Because when you recognize that not everyone has good intentions, you begin to guard your story, not out of fear, but out of self-respect. 2. Oversharing can lead to misjudgment in an age where sharing every detail of your life has become normalized. Whether on social media, in casual conversations, or even in professional settings, it's easy to fall into the trap of thinking that transparency is always a virtue. But there is a fine line between being open and being vulnerable to unnecessary judgment. Oversharing can blur that line in dangerous ways. When you reveal too much of your personal story, especially to people who don't have the context, the empathy, or the maturity to understand it, you risk being labeled by a moment rather than your full journey. You may be judged for decisions you made under pressure, for chapters of your life that you've already grown from, or for struggles that others can't relate to or don't want to understand. People often form quick, shallow opinions, and once those impressions are made, they're hard to reverse. The danger is that many people judge through the lens of their own limited experience. They don't know what it took for you to survive certain seasons. They don't see the behind the scenes battles. They just hear your story and reduce you to it. She's broken. He's irresponsible. They're dramatic. Suddenly, instead of being seen for your resilience, you're seen for your struggle. Instead of being valued for your progress, you're remembered for your pain. 3. Your story deserves respect. Your story is more than just a collection of events. It's your life, your experiences, your lessons, your pain, and your victories. It's the road you've traveled, often filled with detours, struggles, setbacks, and silent battles that no one else fully understands. For that reason alone, your story deserves to be handled with care, intention, and above all, respect. Too often, people feel pressured to share their journey for validation or approval. Whether it's in the form of a vulnerable post online, a heart-to-heart with someone you barely know, or an attempt to explain yourself to people who aren't even listening deeply, you might find yourself giving away pieces of your story in moments when you're still healing, still growing, still trying to make sense of it yourself. But here's the truth: you do not owe anyone access to your inner world. Telling your story isn't just about talking, it's about entrusting someone with something valuable. And not everyone is qualified to hold that weight. Some people won't understand your depth. Some won't appreciate the strength it took for you to survive what you did. They might treat your truth casually, interrupt you with judgment, or worse, use it for their own benefit. They may not see it as something sacred because they haven't earned the right to hear it. Respecting your story means recognizing that it's not for public consumption or casual conversation. It means knowing when to speak and when to be silent. It means realizing that just because you're capable of sharing doesn't mean it's the right time, place, or audience to do so. Every chapter of your life isn't meant to be read aloud. Some pages are just for you, or for a trusted few who see the value in your honesty and meet it with grace, not gossip. There is dignity in discretion. When you treat your story with the reverence it deserves, you also teach others how to treat it. You set a standard that says, this is not something to be picked apart, judged, or spread without care. This is mine, and it matters. A respect begins with you. When you honor your own journey, you create space for it to be seen with the value, depth, and weight it truly holds for. Privacy builds power in a world that constantly encourages you to share your thoughts, your plans, your feelings, your failures. Choosing privacy can feel almost rebellious, but there is something profoundly powerful about keeping certain parts of your life to yourself. Privacy is not secrecy, it is strategy. It's the decision to hold back, to protect your energy, and to preserve your personal growth without the noise of the outside world. When you keep your dreams, struggles, and progress private, you remove the distractions that often come with external opinions, judgments, or premature praise. You give yourself space to evolve without interruption. You're not performing for an audience. You're not seeking validation. You're focused entirely on the process. And that's where real transformation happens. Without having to explain yourself, justify your choices, or defend your past, you move more freely, more boldly. Privacy also creates a boundary that separates what is sacred from what is common. Not everyone needs to know what you're working on, healing from, or aiming for. When you keep certain aspects of your life private, you retain control over your narrative. You decide who knows what and when. That control isn't about manipulation. It's about self-respect. You're not withholding to deceive. You're withholding to protect. Think about it. Some of your most significant growth probably happened in silence, behind closed doors when no one was watching. There is strength in that solitude. There is clarity in that quiet. When you're not explaining your every move, you're less likely to be influenced or discouraged by opinions that don't align with your truth. You become grounded in your own values and vision, and here's something many overlook. When you're private, you're unpredictable. People can't anticipate your next step, can't interfere with your momentum, can't sabotage what they can't see. In a world where exposure often leads to exploitation, privacy becomes a form of protection. It shields your progress, guards your peace, and amplifies your focus. The less you broadcast, the more you can build. 5. The right time matters. There's a profound difference between having a story to tell and knowing when to tell it. Timing is everything. Even the most powerful message can fall flat, or worse, cause harm if it's shared too soon, too suddenly, or with the wrong people. When it comes to your personal story, the timing of when you reveal it can affect not only how it's received, but how it impacts you emotionally, mentally, and even spiritually. Sometimes, in the urgency to feel seen or understood, we rush to share our experiences before we've processed them fully. But speaking about something while you're still deeply entangled in it can leave you exposed, raw, and vulnerable to reactions you're not ready for. You may not yet have the clarity to explain it without being overwhelmed, or the strength to handle misunderstanding and criticism. What you say in a moment of emotional turbulence may not reflect the deeper truths you'll uncover with time and reflection. Telling your story prematurely can also interrupt your own healing. When you share before you're ready, you're inviting opinions, feedback, and potentially even doubt from others, at a time when what you truly need is internal focus, not external input. People may question your choices, offer unsolicited advice, or fail to grasp the depth of what you've been through. Their reactions can confuse you, set you back, or make you question progress you've already made. Furthermore, not everyone you meet is meant to witness every stage of your evolution. Some parts of your journey are still unfolding. They're not ready to be narrated. They're still being written. Sharing your story at the wrong time can feel like opening a book in the middle of a draft, before the plot has settled and the message is clear. Letting something mature before you speak on it gives it weight, clarity, and meaning. You gain perspective. You begin to understand not just what happened, but why it mattered, and what you've learned from it. The right time to share your story is not when you're pressured or emotional, but when you're grounded. When you can speak from a place of peace, not pain. When you no longer need validation from your audience, but simply want to offer your truth with wisdom and purpose. In that space, your story can inspire rather than shock, teach rather than confuse, and uplift rather than drain. 6. Your healing is personal. Healing is not a performance. It's not something that needs to be proven, posted, or narrated in real time for others to validate. Your healing is deeply personal, unique in its pace, its path, and its privacy. And when you treat it as something sacred rather than public, you give yourself the space to genuinely recover, grow, and transform without pressure or interference. The truth is, healing is messy, it's not linear. Some days you feel strong, other days you break down over things you thought you had already moved past, and that's normal. But when you share your healing journey too soon or too widely, especially before it's stable, you may unknowingly subject yourself to the expectations or opinions of others, many of whom don't fully understand your pain or your process. Well-meaning people might rush you, they might try to fix you. Others may offer advice you didn't ask for or compare your situation to theirs, minimizing your experience. And then there are those who aren't well-meaning at all. People who see your vulnerability as a weakness, who may gossip about your struggle, or who subtly use your openness to feed their ego. None of that contributes to healing. In fact, it can make the process heavier and more confusing. When you keep your healing personal, you allow yourself to truly feel what you need to feel without filters, without performance, and without the burden of needing to be understood at every step. You can fall apart in peace. You can rebuild at your own pace. You can change your mind, try different coping methods, seek help privately, and grow without having to explain every detail to anyone else. Also, your healing isn't anyone else's responsibility to witness or approve. You don't need to narrate your progress for people to believe it's happening. Sometimes the most profound healing happens in silence, in the stillness of your own thoughts, in the quiet decisions you make every day to choose peace, to forgive, to let go, or to start again. You don't owe anyone a timeline or a testimony. You owe yourself the kindness of patience and the gift of grace. By keeping your healing process personal, you protect the most fragile, formative parts of your journey. You give your heart the privacy it needs to mend. And in time, when you're truly ready, not just to speak, but to speak from strength, you'll find that the parts you once guarded so fiercely may one day become the very parts that empower others. But even then, the choice to share will be yours. 7. Mystery is a form of strength in a time where people are encouraged to bear everything. To share every thought, every milestone, every setback, choosing to remain a little unknown is often misunderstood. But there is immense strength in mystery. When you don't reveal every aspect of yourself, your plans, or your pain, you preserve something powerful, your sense of self, your personal boundaries, and your strategic advantage. Mystery isn't about being deceptive or distant. It's about being selective. It's the awareness that not everything needs to be explained, exposed, or justified. It's the quiet confidence that your worth does not depend on how much others know about you. When people can't fully figure you out, they can't easily predict you, control you, or manipulate your narrative. That unpredictability gives you freedom. It keeps you centered. It allows you to move in silence and strike with impact, without the weight of everyone's opinions shaping your direction. Being mysterious also commands a different kind of respect. People tend to be more curious, more thoughtful, and more cautious around those who don't overexpose themselves. There's a subtle power in not always being accessible, in not always having an answer, in not sharing everything you feel or think. That restraint signals maturity, self-discipline, and emotional intelligence. It shows that you don't need to be loud to be heard or visible to be influential. Furthermore, when you maintain a sense of mystery, you create healthy boundaries. You decide what parts of yourself are public and what parts are personal. That separation protects your peace and gives you room to evolve without the scrutiny of others watching every step. People can't attack what they don't know, they can't sabotage what they can't see, and they can't discredit what you haven't disclosed. Mystery at its core is rooted in self-control. It's the ability to withhold, not because you're hiding, but because you understand the value of timing, privacy, and power. You don't owe anyone complete access to your mind, your emotions, or your story. Keeping parts of yourself undisclosed is not a weakness. It's a choice, a strong, intentional one.